Greetings, Poké fans! Michael here. Since the dawn of Pokemon time, meaning when Pokemon was first released on the Game Boy, not when Dialga created time, you get the picture, the choice of your starter Pokemon has been an extremely important decision. Which starter Pokemon you select affects the rest of your playthrough, and a lot of times a person's first ever starter Pokemon will end up being their favorite Pokemon of all time. Now, while we can all agree that starter Pokemon are awesome, we can't all agree on which one is the best, especially not in Generation 1, the best known generation of starters, and the one that I see debated on which one is the best the most often. I was thinking about this debate recently, so I decided to make a video determining which original Kanto starter is the absolute best in the most objective way possible. How I'm going to be doing this is that I will be ranking Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise from 1st through 3rd in each of 4 categories: competitive battling prowess, popularity, usefulness in a Kanto playthrough, and usefulness in a Kalos playthrough. The best Pokemon in each category will get 3 points, second best gets 2, and third best gets 1. And then once I've gone through all 4 categories, each Pokemon will have its points totaled up, and whoever has the most points is the definitive best Kanto starter. So if you're excited to find out which Kanto starter is the best, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to my channel if you're new here, and make sure you predict down in the comments below which one you think is going to be the best. And without further ado, here is which Kanto starter is the absolute best. The first category is popularity. Now, since this video seeks to determine the best Kanto starter, not the strongest Kanto starter, the aesthetics of a Pokemon and its overall design matter quite a bit in this. Now, since this category is far and away the most subjective, and I didn't want to just use my own personal preferences, I decided the best way to do this was to go by popularity. Which starter is most liked by the most amount of people? I figured the best way to do this was a simple poll, and the way I could reach the most amount of people was by posting a poll on my community tab asking you guys which of the Kanto starters is your favorite, since favorites can be determined by whether you like it because it's strong, nostalgia, whatever. And the poll got over 20,000 votes, so a pretty healthy sample size. As you can see from the screenshot of the results here, Charizard easily won, getting around 50% of the votes. And then Venusaur and Blastoise were a lot closer together, but Blastoise did edge out Venusaur a bit, getting about 27% of the vote, while Venusaur only got 22%. I know a simple poll of my community tab isn't the best way to get a good idea of the community's opinions on the starter Pokemon, but I figure a sample size of 21,000 is a pretty healthily solid one. So Charizard gets first place in this category, netting at 3 points, then Blastoise got second, 2 points, and Venusaur last, getting 1 point. The next category is competitive battling viability. Now, I understand that not everyone does competitive battling in Pokemon. Heck, I don't even do competitive battling in Pokemon, but I still think it's a valuable metric to determine which one is best, since that's a sizable portion of the community, and how good a Pokemon is in competitive battling is going to determine how much it's seen and used outside of regular playthroughs. I am by no means a competitive battling expert. I know a solid chunk about it, but I am by no means someone you should be asking for competitive battling advice. Just go to Smogon, that's gonna help you out a lot more. But speaking of Smogon, because I'm not an expert on this, I figured the easiest way to rank these by competitive viability was what Smogon tier they were a part of. Also, I will be looking at how their Mega Evolutions fare, not the regular forms of them, since their Mega Evolutions are a part of these Pokemon and are a lot better than their regular forms, so I figured it made the most sense to rank them by their best form, not their regular form. Blastoise gets last place in this category because while both Mega Venusaur and the Mega Charizards are in OU, Mega Blastoise is in UU, which means it's still a pretty solid Pokemon, it's just the other ones are better. So last place for Blastoise. Now it's much trickier to choose between Venusaur and Charizard here because all of their Mega forms are in the same tier, OU, which is, for those who don't know, the best tier in Smogon outside of Ubers, which is mostly just legendaries. After doing a bit of research and getting advice from my very good friend Pokemon, who knows a lot more about competitive battling than me, I decided to give the edge to Charizard in this case, simply due to its unpredictability. If you see a Venusaur on your opponent's team in an OU tier, you know it's probably gonna be a Mega Venusaur because regular Venusaur is not very good. However, if you see a Charizard, you can't know whether it's a Mega Charizard X or a Mega Charizard Y until it actually goes Mega. And that's scary because the two of them are very potent offensive threats in two different ways. Mega Charizard X is a hard-hitting physical attacker with Flare Blitz and Dragon Claw and Dragon Dance, whereas Mega Charizard Y uses Drought plus Fire Blast to be a very powerful special attacker. This unpredictability definitely makes Charizard the better Pokemon here because if your opponent guesses wrong as to which Mega Charizard you have, they can be in quite a lot of trouble. I do agree that it's unfair that Charizard got special treatment and got 2 Megas here, whereas Venusaur only got 1, but that's how it is, not really anything we can do about it now. Also, this ranking is pretty consistent with VGC 2018 tiering. I did find a preliminary tier list that I will link in the description below that puts Mega Charizard Y in the A+ tier, Mega Venusaur in the B- tier, and Mega Blastoise in the C+ tier. Mega Charizard X is in the C- tier, which is the worst of the 4, but I still think Charizard deserves the #1 spot here because Mega Charizard Y is so drastically better than all of the other ones. So at the end of this category, Charizard still has the lead with 6 total points, while Blastoise and Venusaur are tied for second, both with 3 points. The next category is Playthrough Usefulness in a Kanto playthrough. A Pokemon's viability in competitive doesn't always translate to how good it is in a playthrough. There's certain really good Pokemon that you don't catch until very late or don't evolve until very late, and there are other Pokemon that may not be good in competitive but are pretty solid members of a team through a playthrough. And of all the playthrough Pokemon you could possibly use, your starter tends to be the most important because it's your very first Pokemon and it's gonna affect how easy your early game battles are and it's gonna be with you for the rest of the playthrough. It's for these reasons why I decided that Playthrough Usefulness should be a category in this video, but I'm also doing 2 different categories for Kanto and Kalos, because you get the Kanto starters very early on in both of those playthroughs, but the gyms and trainers that you battle are very drastically different, so a Pokemon's usefulness in these 2 regions is gonna vary pretty wildly. I'm basing my decisions on which one is best for a playthrough primarily on how well it matches up against gym leaders, Elite Four, the evil team, and your rival all throughout that playthrough. Also, for this Kanto section, I won't be covering yellow since it doesn't really make sense to compare which starter is better when you have access to all 3 of them. For a Kanto playthrough, Charizard is far and away easily the worst starter to pick. It's very, very bad against the first 2 gyms, Brock and Misty, which is a big deal since your other team options are pretty limited. And in addition to that, it's only really strong against one of the gyms, being Erica. In addition to that, if you're playing red and blue, Charizard can't even learn Fly, which is that's just a massive inconvenience. Venusaur and Blastoise are in a much closer competition, but I do have to give the edge to Venusaur here. Blastoise is pretty solid against Brock, but then it's not very good against Misty, then gets absolutely bodied by Surge and Erica. It's good against Blaine and Giovanni later in the game, but so is pretty much any other water-type Pokemon that knows Surf, which you will have by the time you face Blaine, along with the fact that there are tons and tons of other viable water-type options in Gen 1. Meanwhile, Bulbasaur wrecks the first 2 gyms, then resists Surge and Erica, and then is also good against Giovanni in all 3 of the battles with him, is really good against Lorelei, albeit it's a bit risky because they're also ice types, but you know, they're also weak to grass, and it's also very good against Bruno, being super effective against his Onixes and resisting the fighting type attacks from his other 3 Pokemon. Also, as a nice little added bonus, choosing Bulbasaur makes it so half of your rival's championship team is weak to electric type attacks. So it's a nice way to exploit some weaknesses in your rival's team that they wouldn't have if you had chosen either of the other 2 starters. Venusaur does have the drawback of not having access to as strong of a stab move in the Kanto playthroughs, since in Gen 3 its best grass type move is Giga Drain, whereas in Gen 1 it's Razor Leaf, but due to the fact that it matches up so well against so many of the gyms and important trainers, I still think it deserves the edge in this case. So with this ranking of Venusaur in first, then Blastoise in second, and Charizard in third, the current point totals are Charizard is still in the lead with 7, Venusaur is in second place with 6, and Blastoise is in last place with 5 points as we head into the final category, playthrough usefulness in Kalos. In Pokemon X and Y, you get to select a Kanto starter shortly after beating the first gym. And that's a pretty important choice since most people choose to use it on your playthrough team, and you probably should use it. They're very good Pokemon. We'll start off with last place, which is Blastoise. Blastoise is not very useful for a Kalos playthrough. It only offensively matches up well against Malva and Grant. And by the way, for Grant, it's only good against his Amara, not good against his Tyrant, so... Defensively, it's good against more important battles, resisting a lot of attacks from gym leaders, but it's still less than the other two, so Blastoise is definitely the worst Kanto starter choice in the Kalos region. You're better off just starting with Greninja and then picking one of the other two. Venusaur and Charizard are in much tighter competition as to which one is better for a Kalos playthrough, but I've decided to give the edge to Charizard. Let me explain. Venusaur is definitely still an excellent Pokemon for a Kalos playthrough. Its Mega has really good stats and gets rid of its fire and ice weaknesses with Thick Fat, plus it finally gets access to strong Poison Stab, getting access to Venoshock shortly after the first gym, and getting access to Sludge Bomb much later in the game via TM. And that's actually a big deal because Poison is good against more types than Grass in Gen 6 because of Fairy's existence. Offensively, it beats down Grant's Amara, Valerie, and Seabold's Pokemon, and defensively, it resists attacks from Karina, Ramos, Clement, Valerie, and Seabold. But even though Mega Venusaur is very good for a Kalos playthrough, Charizard is a bit better, and Charizard is interesting because how good it is actually depends quite a bit on which version you're playing, because it depends on which Mega Charizard you get access to. Mega Charizard Y is great because it's an offensive powerhouse against Karina if you've evolved it by that time, Ramos, Wolfric, and Wixstrom, whereas it's also good defensively against those same 4 plus Valerie and Malva. But on the flip side of that, there's Mega Charizard X, and it's definitely superior. It has the same offensive power against those same 4 that I mentioned, in addition to Drasna. That is kind of risky using a dragon type against other dragons, but like, it's still good. Its dragon typing also gives you more defensive resistances as well, going from being weak to Clement's Pokemon to actually resisting them, which is really big for his Magneton since you have fire type attacks. Plus, it increases how much you resist Malva and Ramos's Pokemon. You no longer resist Valerie's attacks, but still not weak to her. Because Charizard, especially Mega Charizard X, matches up better offensively and defensively against more important trainers in a Kalos playthrough, I'm giving it the edge over Venusaur in this case, meaning Charizard's the best for Kalos, Venusaur is the second, and Blastoise is the worst. So the final ranking of the Kanto starters gets us with Blastoise in last place with 6 points, Venusaur in second place with 8 points, and Charizard in first place with 10 points. Meaning, according to my definitive analysis, Charizard is the best Kanto starter. Congratulations, Charizard! Yay! Yay! Confetti everywhere! It was definitely a pretty close race though, since I said that Charizard and Venusaur were close in both competitive and Kalos playthrough categories, and if they had been flipped in either one of those, they would have tied with 9 points. And if they had been flipped in both, Venusaur would have won. Sorry, Blastoise. Now, of course, all 3 Kanto starter Pokemon are awesome. They're very well designed, are packed with nostalgia, and were great Pokemon to start off the world of Pokemon with. So if yours didn't win, don't be too sad. All 3 of them are really awesome. What did you think of this video? Do you agree with my rankings? Would you want to see similar videos done for the other generations of starters? Because I am considering doing that if this video does well. Let me know down in the comments below! And if you're new to my channel, make sure you subscribe. I make fun Pokemon videos many days a week, and I'm sure you will enjoy all of them. Alright, that's all I have for now. So till next time, big fans. Gotta catch them all!